The definition of omniscience is the state of knowing everything, particularly in regards to the creator towards the creation and the creatures at large. It is not only said to be a spectator, but having the ability to embody the sentience within all things. And I think to myself, what a cosmic curse if I was hypothetically God and I was able to embody every toothache right now and every migraine headache simultaneously in live time, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Holy shit. Pun intended. That would be enough to make me want to obliterate everything just on account of headaches and toothaches alone. But that's barely scratching the surface in regards to the amount of torturous pain that this world has to offer. I can only think in regards to my sphere of influence. I can look upon a stray dog who's walking with a limp because it got hit by a car, and I can see the bones protruding as it's starving to death. And that image alone can haunt my being for the rest of my life. Not to mention just my depression, me waking up in the middle of the night to take a piss and then I stub my toe. I mean, me stubbing my toe and my depression is enough to overwhelm me. It's my own suffering. But secondarily to that is my empathy to the suffering of what I witness in my small sphere of influence. Yet, if I was to embody all sentient suffering, again, I would have to obliterate the entirety of creation itself as the hypothetical creator and cause the creatures to suffer no more. Hell, if I had the ability to embody all of the suffering with animals and men, women, and children alike within a 1-mile radius, I imagine it would be so severe that I would actually drop dead on the spot. It would be incomprehensible. But if I was able to embody that incomprehensibleness, I believe my life would end. Yet, we are told that the God of this realm is omniscient. When it comes to us, as a metaphor, our level of awareness when it comes to our own suffering and the suffering of our small sphere of influence is like walking in the forest and your elbow grazes the bark of a pine tree and it gives you a sliver. And you look upon the sliver and you get a sewing needle and you try to take it out. and you think this is overwhelming enough. But when we're talking about the omniscience of a so-called benevolent creator God, who is not only aware of that particular sliver, but it's aware of all wood in general. And the wood, in this case, with all trees in the world combined, not to mention your wooden house or your wooden coffee table, etc., it's aware of all of that personified sentience. And that sentience is undergoing so much pain, and there might be happiness and pleasure within that. But what good is a large amount of pleasure when there's even a larger amount of physical and emotional and psychological extreme suffering? It becomes null and void as far as I'm concerned. The pleasure, that is. When pleasure is accompanied with a 1,000-fold pain in the surrounding of whoever is undergoing that so-called pleasure. And you are a so-called God who has the ability to embody and witness firsthand everything that goes on. And you see the torture. And yet, it goes on. Yet, at the same time, you are said to be all-powerful. That means you have the hypothetical ability to make it stop, but you don't. So that leads me to believe that if you are all-knowing, and at the same time omnipresent and all-powerful, but yet you witness all of the suffering, and you do nothing to make it stop, that is proof to me that whoever has this property of omniscience must be a sadist by definition. It gets off on witnessing and embodying the agony, and there's no way around it. Let's just say, hypothetically, you and I have the free will to make ourselves chronically happy and have all of the experiences that we wish to have on account of our will. If that was the case, regardless, if at the same time you had an aspect of, quote, Godhead, and you were able to tap into the suffering of the world all simultaneously, it would be impossible for you to be happy and to be oblivious while you're distracted with the pleasures of your own life. Because that very awareness of all of that agony would want you to make it stop. And if you couldn't make it stop, your awareness of it would drive you so insane that you would either drop dead on the spot, and if you didn't drop dead on the spot, you would have to unalive yourself on the spot. Yet, you and I are not, quote, God. We're not omniscient. We're overwhelmed with our own pain and the pain that we witness brought about by others with our field of vision and our day-to-day life. But if we were able to tap into suffering in itself, international, I promise you, we would beg for a big red button to push. But this God who has this omniscient power, the fact that it's able to continue to go on like it does, and it has gone on, and it will continue to go on, and it continues to get worse and not better, and there's nothing to make it stop. This to me is just proof that what we call God is nothing more than a sadistic cosmic psychopath who likes to witness with its ears the screams of agony, that likes to see with its eyes the tears brought about by the pain. If anything, this world is a masturbatory fantasy of the demiurge itself, and there's just no way around it. There is far too much torture and agony in this world to justify not only its existence, but moreover its continuance. Me, on the other hand, I could witness a dog on a small chain in my neighbor's backyard, and that alone will give me a sleepless night. I can overhear my other neighbors having a domestic dispute, and that alone will give me a sleepless night. And that is just within hearing range for me. When I witnessed my mother dying, her slow, painful, agonizing death due to her severe autoimmune disease, that was just my mother, and I saw it with my eyes. And even though she's deceased now, and has been for several months, her pain continues to haunt me. And I say that I'm, quote, glad that she's dead, not because I didn't love her, and would like to see a scenario where she was still able to be alive. But if she had to continue to be alive in that uncurable state, I just assume she'd get relief. And I'm far from omniscient. I've just seen enough within the, let's say, a dozen people that I witness suffering on a constant basis within my last decade of being there to witness it firsthand. But if we're going to talk about omniscience, all knowing, hell, what I know as far as the suffering I experience and the suffering that I've witnessed is a spit in the fucking ocean. But we're going to talk about suffering with apparently over 8 billion people that exist on this earth, so they say. In third world countries, all of the kids in cages who are being abused all over the world. You want to say God is good when it's omniscient and it's all powerful, but it does nothing to make it stop? How sick you must be. You need to stick your finger down your fucking throat and you need to make yourself vomit all of your derangement into the toilet. And then look at yourself in the fucking mirror and try to reconcile with your own reason. If you think that shit. This realm may technically be an illusion, but the suffering that it produces is all too real. Therefore, I conclude upon that logic that perhaps it is a mistake to refer to this realm as an illusion entirely, because the illusion itself is so malefic that it causes us to be in a state of agony, even if that happens to be mere depression, which I believe is a form of agony. So, to say that this realm is an unreality, well, I used to say that as a coping mechanism. For example, 6 months ago, I had a wisdom tooth surgically extracted, and my recovery immediately after, even though I was on painkillers, was so excruciating that I actually cried tears. And that's only happened to me 2 other times. The other time was in 2012 when I had a major surgery on my Achilles tendon. I'd rather not get into why that is because that would be too much of a digression, but I was having issues where my Achilles tendon did not grow properly, and it's a really rare condition. So I had to have a surgery where my Achilles tendon was elongated, and I ended up becoming 4 inches taller because of it. However, when I was recovering from this, that's the other time I was in so much pain that I cried tears. And as a coping mechanism, particularly with the wisdom tooth extraction, as I was crying, I was saying, this pain is unreal because it belongs to the body. My central nervous system is reacting to the nerve endings in my dentistry that are inflamed. And this irritation that I'm undergoing has no effect upon my spirit. But then I had a counterthought to that, which I believe to be my spirit itself, that said, no, fuck you. This pain is real. And because this pain is real, the body that is afflicting my consciousness so must also be real. And that was a game changer for me. Because still to this day, if I am encountering some sort of a external stimuli within my sensory integration, where, let's say, I'm being abused verbally and I become enraged, I no longer say that this emotion is an illusion, that the external stimuli is an illusion. No, the external stimuli is real because it's causing me to undergo pain. And when you feel pain, you know that it's real. In fact, it is the only thing, if we are going to say that this reality is a so-called computer simulation and it's an illusion entirely, let's just say that's true. The pain that it causes us to feel emotionally, psychologically, and physically, because it's all too real, it's a contradiction in terms, in my mind, to say that this is an unreality or it's entirely a phantasmagoria. Because if I was to ask you, just after you say that this reality is not real, I say, okay, well, is your pain real? And then you say, yes, my pain is very real. Wait a minute, I thought you just said that the external reality itself is unreal. But it's this very external reality that's causing all of your anguish. So how can that be? And then you scratch your head and then you realize that you have fallen into another lie. And what is this particular lie? It is the lie of downplaying reality and therefore downplaying your suffering. Let's not undermine the severity of this reality, even if it is an illusion. Because when you're passing a kidney stone, no matter how much you want to cope with the pain that you're feeling by saying, it's my body that's feeling the pain, this is an illusionary reality, this is a computer simulation, this is a nightmare, it's not real, it's not real. Yes, it is. The pain that you're feeling is very real. Your depression is very real. Your anger, your hatred, the fact that you're so miserable that maybe you want to unalive yourself, these sensations are real. And it is real because this is a very real objective reality that's bringing it about, even if it is holographic in nature, even if at the end of the day it's all ones and zeros. That matters not, because this simulation is so advanced and complex that you have a central nervous system. You have an endocrine system that shoots biochemical hormones into your bloodstream. And it forces you to feel the biochemical suffering, the physical suffering, not to mention the suffering of your mind. Just as an extreme example to prove my point, let's say somebody is kidnapped, tied to a bed, and abused up the asshole by the male appendage. While this subject matter in question is undergoing such a cruel and unusual punishment, when it comes to the aftermath of his or her therapy, when they're crying on account of them being traumatized from what they experienced, you walk up to them and you tell them that this reality is a simulation and it's, quote, not real. How do you think they're going to respond to you? As I'm speaking to you right now, I'm actually sick. I have strep throat. Right now, I just took a sip of water, and as it went down my esophagus, it hurt to swallow. I feel sickly. I think it's because of this full moon that, regardless of the fact that I'm sick, I'm still able to have enough energy to articulate myself, but as of right now, I am in fact unwell. And I feel the sensation very crystal clear of my fatigue and my bedriddenness and the pain that I undergo when I swallow. Is that an illusion? I think not, my friends. I think it's very real. When I look out into this world and I see all of the mouth breathers who have become social waste products, the profanity of the multitude that are walking around like a bunch of zombies. When I look at their state, I don't say that it's unreal. Psychological warfare is very real. My depression because of it is very real. When I'm trying to get a good night's sleep at night and my neighbors are blasting their music at 9 o'clock in the morning and it wakes me up, and I hear power tools from my neighbors when I'm trying to read a book. You know, even though they have every right to do so, my agitation on account of that noise pollution is very real. It's a paradox. I consider this reality to be unreal, but at the same time, I consider it to be all too real, because although it's technically a simulation, what happens within the simulation has to be real. Because if you say that it's not, then you're saying that the suffering of sentience in itself is also unreal, which is false. So I'm bringing this to your attention because it's become a cliche to me at this point when I hear my subscribers, when I talk to them on a one-on-one basis. And they talk about this world as if it's some kind of non-world. You know, they say it's like, yeah, we live in a world, but at the same time, it's really just not real. Okay, well, this world that is simultaneously a non-world, you communicate to me you're suffering because of it. And if your suffering is real, then the very world that brought it about must be real as well. So maybe we should deny altogether the theory that this place is not real. Because as far as I'm concerned, it is real. Even if you want to take the lies and you say, the lies of which are the building blocks of what makes this world consist as it is, yes, I agree. Lies are the building blocks of this world, and a lie, by definition, is an error insofar as it's a non-entity. But just because it is a non-entity insofar as it is a lie and it does not exist, the consequences of this nonsensical mass mass dissemination of false data, okay? The mass dissemination of false data that we call the hive mind virus, which is the demonic thought forms that possess sentience itself, that's real. Yes, the lie is an untruth, but the consequences of this untruth and what it does to afflict the consciousness that has reached that quote unquote NPC embodiment, well, that is an affliction upon them by believing the lie in the first place. That is very real. And your lucidity that gives you the ability to not fall victim to the lie, even though you don't fall victim to the lie and you are in alignment with what you consider to be truth as opposed to the lie. The torment of living in a world with a bunch of brainwashed zombies because they are demonically possessed by falsehood, that's very real. So I would say that even though the lie is an untruth, the lie at the same time is a very real thing. And your suffering because of it is a very real thing. This reality is real, ladies and gentlemen. And if you say otherwise, then you're just downplaying the severity of this hellscape that you're dealing with. If you take this reality serious enough to call it a hellscape, and you know it firsthand, then this hellscape is a real fucking hellscape. And you know that shit because you live it on a daily basis.